When I was younger, I grew up in an competitive environment. Singapore at the time was still developing in the 60s, and competition was not simply a matter of ambition, it was tied to pure survival. You studied hard because you had to, you worked hard because there was no room to drift. The education system reflected all that. The workplace reflected that as well. Even later, when I entered teaching, I could still feel how deeply that logic remained and shaped us. Everywhere I looked, the measures were the same: results, ranks, qualifications, promotions, output, wealth. And to be fair, the system produced the people we were competent. It produced discipline, produced technical excellence, people who could build, manage, execute, and deliver. But over time, I began to see something very troubling. We were developing the machinery, but neglecting the human being. We were producing great technocrats, but the inner software was very weak. The soul was not being formed with the same seriousness as the intellect. We taught people how to compete, but not always how to reflect. We taught them how to achieve, but not always asked what achievement is for. We prepared them to function in systems, but never always to understand themselves. The question stayed with me for many years. And then my stint at the Australian Islamic College opened my eyes even further. I began to observe that even in an environment shaped by faith, deeper assumptions of the wider world still had greater influence. Matrix still mattered. Measurement still dominated. The language may have been softer. The setting may have been different. But the pool of modern economic thinking remains still there. So I asked the higher school students, those in the age groups of 16 and above, one very simple question: how do you see yourself when you arrive at 30? I expected a range of answers, but what came back was utterly revealing. Most described a future in terms the modern world had already prepared for: qualifications, career status, income, material stability, external success. And as I listened, I realized something very important. These were not bad children. They were responding honestly to the world they had inherited. A world that constantly pulls them and tells them their value lies in measurable outcomes. A world that reduces success to pure performance. A world that knows how to count but does not always know how to cultivate. Very few people spoke about the kind of person they wanted to become. The students that spoke about character, inner balance, adab, service, wisdom, mercy, courage, restraint, or even accountability before Allah was can be counted in my fingers. The moment was one of this spark of my intention to write the book, Reclaiming Education. Because I came to believe that education had drifted too far from its true purpose. Education is not merely about preparing a person for the economy, it is about forming a human being who can carry knowledge with responsibility, power with humility, and freedom with moral clarity. And that is why at the Sayyidina Omar Institute, the work we are doing is not just about information, it is about formation. We are trying to recover something that many systems have neglected: the inner architecture of the human being. In my reflections and in my work, I often speak about the four inner structures that shape us: the Qalb, Ruh, Aql, and Nafs. The Qalb, the heart, is where intention, sincerity, and moral direction are calibrated. The ruh is the higher anchoring that reminds us we are more than consumers, we are more than workers, more than performers. We are beings created by Allah, entrusted with life, and destined to return to Him. And the akal is a faculty of reason, discernment, judgment, and understanding. It must be sharpened but also disciplined. And finally, the nafs is a self that must be trained, it must be restrained and purified. Because without discipline, it can pull a person toward vanity, greed, heedlessness, and excess. If these four are neglected, a person may still appear successful in the world, but inwardly remain fragmented. They are nurtured and brought into balance. This will create a meaningful and even worldly striving can be carried out with pure integrity. That to me is the real question. Not simply what job will you have, not simply how much will you earn, not simply where will you rank, but who will you be, who you will be become, what soul will shape you, what soul you will be manifesting. What will carry you when titles fall away, when the applause fades, and when you are standing alone? How would you face the world? And how would you return to Allah? Now, these are not secondary questions. These are the central questions. Our age is filled with systems that measure everything except what matters. We measure GDP, rankings, productivity, market value, institutional outcomes. These tell us something about output, but they do not tell us whether we are producing human beings who are inwardly sound, socially responsible, spiritually awake, and morally anchored. And that is why there is so much restlessness and chaos around us. People have credentials, but there's no inner peace. They have careers, but no real compass. They have access to information, but very little wisdom. They have choice, but not always direction. So the work before us is really very serious. We do not reject excellence. We do not reject learning, technology, and everything else. We do not reject striving. Islam does not call us to mediocrity, but it does call us to order things rightly, prioritize. It calls us to put the human being before the machine, the soul before the matrix, intention before image, and accountability before ambition. At the Sayyidina Omar Institute, this is the conversation we are trying to revive. We want young people and really all of us, you and me, to think beyond the narrow script handed to us by the modern life here in the West. We want to ask deeper questions. We want to recover education as cultivation, not just certification. We want to form people who can live in this world competently, but not be consumed by it. Because in the end, the outcome is not the whole story. The being matters. Who you become matters. What you carry in your heart matters. How you discipline yourself matters. How you use your intellect matters. How you remember your Creator matters. And perhaps that is where real education begins. Not when a person learns how to outperform others and compete, but when a person begins to understand what it really means to live as a fully formed human being standing before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Thank you. Wabillahi tawfiq wal hidayah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is why I wrote Reclaiming Education: From GDP Metrics to Human Flourishing. It is a challenge to the narrow logic of modern schooling and a call to recover education as the formation of intellect, character, and purpose. If you would like to explore that vision further, the book is available now on Amazon and Lulu.